Bon dia.
In episode 22,
Our guest is definitely one of the most interesting people we've ever recorded with. She's a textile storyteller, a circular design advocate, a healer, and Kubhula's first female voice. Can you believe that? It took us 20 episodes. An all-round beautiful person. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Wacy Zacarias.
Eu não roubei coisa de ninguém, desculpa lá muito.
Há muito boato, há muita poeira nisto tudo, mas muita poeira. Oh, meu irmão, me deixe em paz, por favor.
Tem televisor, está a apodrecer. Roll é atrás porque não está a funcionar.
Eu tenho coronavírus, está aqui.
Eu sou mulata de original, não sou mulata de maquiagem. Viemos todos a correr, chegamos aqui, apanhamos o senhor que já estava morrido desde hoje.
Essa pita tá primeiro juízo. Te apertar. Não sofra. Ativa Mano Dércio. Vai no casamento. Leva aliança. Vai no registro. Mas não assina.
Greetings. We have a very special guest, as mentioned, our first female guest on the Kubhula podcast. Can I get a... I'm rusty. Hello, Wacy. Welcome.
Hello. I'm honored, actually, to be the first female guest. I think that's a good omen.
Yeah, and thank you for actually saying yes to this because, you know, we get a lot of rejects. And I'm joking. We actually... we don't. But it's nice to have a brilliant human being here with us in our studio. And hopefully we can, you know, at the end of this chat, we always say that this is like quite therapeutic. Mm-hmm. We said this quite often. But it's a way in which, you know, we started this just as a way of catching up with friends. And now, you know, we're getting guests, which we never imagined. And it's always nice to have a familiar face, at least to me and to some other people listening to this, such as yourself. So what are you up to? What's happening in your world? I mean, if you could give people like a quick intro of what you do, that would be the right place to start.
Sure. I do a few things. But mainly I'm creator, I would say, of things. Creative objects and I think opportunities in different ways. So I own a design company and we specialize in textiles and accessories. And we have the ambition of becoming completely circular in our design process. We are slowly walking towards that. So maybe I should probably explain what circular means. But like circular design is basically just understanding that your product has a lifespan and you should always design with the end in mind. Because if you think about what fashion industry does is that we pollute. We're probably the fourth biggest polluting industry in the world. And there's a lot of landfill clothes and they just don't go anywhere. So there's this whole movement the first movement was about sustainable fashion. And then it kind of shifted to being a lot more than just being sustainable, but actually as a designer, you having to think about what's going to happen to the product that you're designing at the end of its lifespan. So is it something that can be returned to the ground without any pollution? Can it be recycled into something else? So can it be taken apart? So you have to start thinking about. And also, when you're thinking about the circularity of things, it's about your carbon footprint and thinking about how much pollution you create. Like, are you using toxic materials in your production? Are you paying fair prices? Are you producing in a warehouse full of kids? Should be
Hopefully not.
absolutely not. So, but those
Basta
are all
os
the
nossos iPhones, no? That's enough.
but those are all the things that you should be thinking about. So, of course, once you start thinking in a circular way, you start reducing things like buying raw materials from China. And you start thinking about how can you produce some of those raw materials locally. So how do you create better circular local industries so that your value chain becomes more and more local? But circular is also about the economic value of the product. So how much does your product, what is the value of your product when it leaves your factory versus when it reaches the retail? And that is actually thinking about the people who make it, how much do they get? So the people who make it, and by that I mean if you're working with like either factory makers or artisans, shouldn't be the lowest paid of your value chain because they actually make it, right? So you should try and retain as much value in that community, in that area. And what happens a lot of the times with artisan communities and with exporting materials is that the value is added along the way. So the last seller is the person who makes the most money. So you have examples, and we've seen it. Like people will go to a rural community and buy a basket for 100 meticais, and then you'll go to like a fair somewhere in New York, and that same basket will cost 3,000 meticais. But the guy who made it got 100. So circular is that was just trying to give you a little bit of background about when you think of circular design, what does it mean? It's about closing the loop. So it's really like thinking about all of those things in your process. So our company has always been a sustainable design company, but we've been, I think, a lot more particular in the last few months and just trying to be more intentional in the way that we think about the future of how we want to design. We are right now in the middle of, while everybody else is thinking about closing down, we're thinking about the future. And we're in the middle of designing our first innovation lab. So it will be a textile and material innovation lab where
in Maputo.
In Maputo.
Okay.
It might be the first of a kind in Africa. I don't know, but
Wow.
So it's really a textile and material innovation lab is when we think of the textile industry, we tend to really go for the obvious stuff, like your cotton and your silk and your leathers, your animal leathers. And in this idea of closing the loop and the circularity and looking at other materials, you realize that there are more alternatives. And if you look at your biodiversity or like your rules, like your setting, there are so many other materials that you could find to replace the more traditional materials that maybe don't require as much, resources as other materials require. So if you think about, for example, how much waste you have in your agriculture, we make a textile that is made out of banana leaf. But it's something that for another industry, like for people who grow bananas, that's a waste. That's something that they just throw away.
Yeah.
But for us, it has value. Like our bags made out of banana leaf retail at 9,000 meticais, something that somebody throws away, right? So if you think about, like, if you start creating these value chains out of what people consider waste, what are some of the things that you could create around that? And so things like banana leaf, you have other people making leather out of pineapple, the pineapple stall out of avocado skin. So there's so many things that you could make. I know nobody really wants to think about that, but like, for example, right now when the whole world shut down and people were like in a panic, like how we're going to get these resources. And we were part of a hackathon, and they were thinking of different solutions, how to make like PPE locally, and how do you make masks, and they wanted to 3D print these plastic masks, and so they were like, oh, we have to import the plastic, and then that kind of just defeats the purpose, because you don't really, if the whole world has shut down and you don't have a way of getting that, how do you get the plastic here to make the masks? And but there are alternatives. There are bioplastics that you could make, right?
Yeah.
And actually, one of the bioplastics, which is not very hard to make, that we could easily make here in Mozambique, is out of algae. But I mean, that's something that people don't really know about. So like the Innovation Lab is really about opening people's mind to like different possibilities in terms of materials. But it's also like a space that would allow like young designers to come in and experiment with different projects. So what we want to do is we want to set up a space where we can just play around with materials and experiment, but also create samples. And at the same time, have a system where like per year, we incubate 3 young designers who have different ideas that they want to develop. So we would get somebody else to sponsor for them to stay in the space for like a year. And we would like accompany them through the development of this product, the research, and the facilities. They could use the facilities and everything else. And then hopefully they would be, they would be mentored and, get market ready. And hopefully at the end of this year, they would be ready to then set up their own space. I mean, within the space, we would have other studios that they could rent. But initially, we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to do that without having to think about paying for space or, like the investment. Because that's, I think as a young designer, that's one of the things that is the hardest, is to think, okay, how do I start, right? But yeah, so that's where we're at, I think, with what we're planning for the future. We've been doing some quite interesting projects. We're doing a project around what we call healing textiles. And it's really like...
Healing textiles?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the idea here is, well, it's actually like a mixture of, I think for me, it's a mixture of 2 worlds, because as a designer and as a healer, it just, like the thought of it just kind of started to come together. And then it's nothing new actually, but because you have Ayurvedic textiles, which has the same philosophy. So it's really thinking about how could you use medicinal plants to make textiles, and make textiles as in using the plants to dye.
Yeah.
So create color, but also kind of impregnating other properties. Like if you think about aromatherapy, like how could you have like a lavender scented textile? And the purpose is quite practical. It's to help like in healing processes. Like if you're thinking about somebody who has anxiety, and you could have like a t-shirt or a blanket that is the thing that helps them to calm down. Or actually thinking about the times that we're living in now, our thought around that is really like, we're all having to wear these masks.
Yeah.
And we're wearing masks like all day, right? And it's not good. It's not good for your lungs. There have been cases of people like who've collapsed while they were running.
Running while wearing a mask, right?
Yeah, because you're suffocating. So imagine if you could have a mask that would actually help you breathe. So if you have like a mask that is treated with a solution that helps open up your lungs while you're wearing it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that is, the solution could also contain components with like antiviral or antibacterial plants. So it's really in that in that thought process. Like, how do you play around with those? And it's really like very experimental at the moment. We don't know how, like, where we'll go. And I don't think we're really focused on having a specific result, but it's just actually opening up this idea that you could have textiles that do much more than like look good on you. That actually have like a function.
Wow. And how, like, for example, like someone that that lives in Maputo, like how would you get someone, the average Joe or the average person, to like understand something like that?
We're not there.
No, but it's I think it's fascinating. I think one of the things that, if I rephrase my question, it's more like we have this culture here in Mozambique that it's as we all know, the Capulana. Toda mulher moçambicana tem que ter uma capulana. You've heard all the different stories and campaigns and so forth. And something about, I'd say, like African women, like Mozambican women, but African women, they're very proud of their fabric. They're very proud of looking good. They're very proud of using, they're very proud of going to their tailor or going to someone that they know in order to make their clothes. I know my mom was like that, my sister, my aunts, like, all the way through. And looking at things, the way things are now and the way things are going into the future, looking at clothing and looking at clothing that is environmentally, friendly, and all of these, the textile industry has come under hot water recently, and not only recently but over the years, of not being conscious of the fabrics that they're using and so forth. And you can go and do people that are listening can go and do research on all of that. Otherwise, we'll be here for like 3 hours. But I think taking it to a Mozambican context, right? Do you feel that if, let's say that you guys have this, continue on this discovery, do you think it will be hard to get people on board in terms of the different ways that you're going to be using this, doing the different ways of dyeing the plants, doing the different ways of this new technique, if you call it that? Do you think it will actually, people really be interested in, or is it something that you'll have to really sort of do walkthroughs and educate and bring people in your studio and do like sort of like tutorials and what this is about, what does it mean? And do you think the uptake will be difficult in our context?
Deixa eu perguntar, do nível de aceitação das pessoas para essas novas técnicas e fabrics.
I don't think that it will be different than any other product, because if you're a product designer, if you're a designer, you always have to convince and educate your buyer, right? So I think the process will be similar. It's really about how useful is it. If you're thinking about the Mozambican context, you have to think about, if you want it to be something that is widely accepted, it has to be useful for a great number of people. So you have to look at treating illnesses like malaria. So are you producing like a malaria protective capulana?
Yeah.
Something that if you think about how capulana is used and how the mother wraps her baby around, so it's something that she feels, oh, like if I wrap my baby in this at night, then the mosquitoes won't bite. So like you have to really get into the mind of the user and to understand what are their needs. Because if you're doing something, depending on your target market, the way that you design this textile is going to be different, because we all have different needs, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think if you're thinking about like the more widespread diseases, something like asthma, which doesn't really have like a class.
Yeah.
I think that would be easier for people to understand if you're saying that, you know, if you're having an asthma attack and if you're thinking about the physiological things that happen while you're having an attack, and if it's something, you know, if you have a textile that can help you basically breathe better, because that's what happens, like your airways are. I think then it becomes easier for you to understand, and because it's very practical. But if you're talking about things like anxiety, which some people don't really understand that as being an illness, or other things that are not very visible, then it's a different kind of market. It's somebody who goes to therapy for that, who'd understand the use of that, I think. So I think it really depends on how you design the product and what language you use to communicate that as well. Because
that's true, yeah.
if you want to be very fancy about it, then you're going to lose a whole audience.
Yeah.
Or major audience.
Principalmente, por exemplo, no exemplo do anxiety, que afeta todo mundo, todas as classes sociais, mas é extremamente difícil identificar e alguém perceber que está a passar por aquilo. Então, the more we talk about it, mais fácil é, mas seria já um trabalho extensivo de educação of the masses para conseguir chegar a esse ponto, não?
Sim. Um exemplo fácil foi na semana passada, que houve o apagão.
Yes.
Que, I mean, and people's reaction was like, oh, man, a whole night just because somebody climbed the tower, blah, 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 blah. And nobody even stopped to think like, and we were all guilty of it in some way.
Claro.
And then,
I was good. I was actually good.
And then at some point, somebody was like, this kid is probably depressed. Probably has, some kind of...
We spoke about it. That's all.
Distúrbio mental.
Yeah.
But those are not things that culturally we understand. So, like, nobody was thinking like...
Yes.
Oh, it was just like, é chilique. Tem que levar umas palmadas. É mimado.
Quando cheira bom bater-lhe bem para não subir mais.
Like, that's how we treat mental health.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, for those kinds of illnesses, we still have a very long way to go because, we don't talk about it. But how many young people commit suicide in this country every day?
Oh, we don't even know.
And we don't even know.
And we don't even know. And some we do know because there are,
Yeah, in the past, even people around our social circles that we know have...
Yeah, mas isso também tem muito a ver com... acredito eu, que quando acontecem essas coisas, nós temos também a cultura de que está enfeitiçado, ou foi enfeitiçado, ou tem alguma doença, ou esse conceito mais tribal e mais... onde nós tentamos arranjar uma desculpa.
Yeah.
Sem...
I mean, it's... I don't think it's not a bad analogy because it's an understanding. It's to say, because if you think about when you say que alguém foi enfeitiçado, it's kind of also saying that it's not their fault, right? So in their right mind, they would have never done that, which is what mental illness is. In your right mind, you wouldn't. So if you think about, tipo, a nossa relação com coisas como o feitiço é como nós explicamos o unexplainable. Like, we don't get it. We don't understand. So it could only be something external. Somebody must have done it to you. Because, Marcio would never do that.
Yeah.
So that's how they kind of simplify that understanding. At least that's how I think about it. I don't think it's so literal that we...
É como se fosse uma maneira de identificar and label aquela condição.
Sim.
Que eles podem não dizer, ok, it's anxiety, porque as pessoas podem não entender ou conhecer o termo, saber exatamente quais são os sintomas daquilo, mas já viram tantas vezes que throughout history foi classificado como feitiço.
Sim, feitiço ou espírito mau.
Yeah.
Tipo, but it's not you, right? It's something that took over you.
Yeah. E também que é algo que pode ser curado.
Yes. That's the thing. There is a process to cure that, and and I think that is a different way of looking at it and dealing with it. But it's still accepting that there are outside forces that sometimes influence your well-being that you don't really have much control of. That's what. But I think Western medicine takes care of it in a different way, and we take care of it, I guess, here in a different way. I'm not sure which one is better. I think they both lack. They like miss out on some things on both sides, especially with I don't know, because
Não, por exemplo, há uns dias, sorry, interromper, falando só para não perder o fio de pensamento, só falando também disso, como comparaste agora Western Medicine e estás a falar mais do nosso medicina tradicional, acredito, não é? Que seja esse. Nós, por acaso, estamos a conversar acerca disso quando, nesta história toda, e depois falamos de Madagascar e dos produtos que eles estavam a fazer, e infelizmente, a medicina tradicional é logo conotada como mau, como phony. E todos nós sabemos que a medicina Western Medicine veio toda das plantas e é derivada daí. Claro que ninguém está a falar de curar o mau olhar, não é por aí. That's not the point, mas conseguimos perceber que existe a lot of value na medicina tradicional, porque como todos nós aqui, acredito que quem é moçambicano que esteja a ouvir já fez, mais novo, quando doente, um bafo de folhas de eucalipto.
Yeah.
Isso é medicina tradicional.
Yeah.
E isso funciona e funcionou back then, porque é que agora já não funciona, não é? E acredito que, além dessa medicina tradicional, desses bafos, existem muitas outras.
O bafo is one part of the culture, but I know, like, if a lot of people, quase todo mundo aqui tomou aquele medicamento, a panelinha, and that is very basically to prevent epilepsy. Actually, it's like that's what it does.
Do you know what it's called?
What?
The panelinha.
It's a mix of a lot of herbs.
Yeah.
And one of them actually is in, what is it called? It's in the same medicine, the same plant that is in grip water.
Yeah.
The South African. Yeah. So it's the same components. I'm forgetting what the name of the plant is, but the point is that, we had this conversation a week ago, because when, Madagascar came out with this medicine, everybody was like, what the hell, phony? How could he say that it's a cure? I think it was very bold because he called it a cure.
Yeah.
But that was like But I also liked the fact that he had the balls to do it. Like, I was so excited, like, damn, finally, but it kind of had to be him, right? 'Cause he's a bit crazy, but that's another conversation.
Yeah.
But like,
he's a DJ, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we said that.
He was a DJ.
But like, but like the thing that that I think that people miss is that, and I think this is the conversation that's been happening around our reaction to COVID and other illnesses, is we can't really proclaim any cures, because, first of all, the process to have these plants scientifically proven to work is so expensive that we are completely sidelined just by the amount of money it takes.
Yeah.
So, recently, I've been going to the Instituto de Medicina Tradicional, speaking to them about different things and like this healing textile project and other things. And I was like, come on, same conversation. We're healers. We know we have at least the plants that treat most of the symptoms related to COVID and other illnesses. Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we publicize it? But see, the Ministry of Health is still part of like this whole Western medicine school of thought, right?
Doutrina.
Exactly. And they are bound by WHO regulations. And one of the things is they put this Instituto de Medicina Tradicional dentro do Ministério da Saúde. Look at what that does, right? So it means that now we are under WHO compliance.
But is that a bad thing?
Terrible. And I'll explain why. because so they have done tests with a lot of the plants indigenous to Mozambique, medicinal plants. They have done lab tests with rats, and they've done other tests and proven that these plants do heal, and most of them stop at one point, because for it to be considered a medicine that you can give to humans, you have to do clinical trials.
Yeah.
And in clinical trials, every patient has to be insured at $100,000.
Okay,
So
it's not possible.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So that's how they sideline you.
This
Forget
is where
about
we
it.
stop.
Exactly. So but look at how subtle that is, right? No. We encourage you. Please do the research because we want to know. They know. They send scholars here every year to collect these samples and they have the same tests in their lab. They just don't want you to have the agency over it. Because if you have agency over it, what happens? You stop importing. What? What do you stop importing? Which is what makes pharmaceuticals, right? And that is billions and billions of dollars. And that's what funds your HIV programs and your, but let's not get into all of that. Like, because
with tinfoil hats, okay.
No, because that's the truth of it. Like it's not interesting for anybody, for African country or any third world country, not just African. If you think about most countries have indigenous medicine. If they all became autonomous in terms of their own medicine, they wouldn't need pharmaceuticals. So this whole industry, which is one of the biggest in the world, if not the biggest, would die out. So you want to create barriers. And the easiest way to create barriers is to say, of course, everybody can do research. We would never say no. We just need you to insure everybody $100,000. And that's where you stop. So you're never going to put this information out because but you can't say because if something goes wrong, just in case, even though if you think about 80% of our population still depends on traditional healing, 80% of our population does not take chemicals. 80% of our population lives based on plant medicine alone. In most remote areas in Mozambique, there is no posto de saúde. They just rely on traditional healing. So it's not working because people live. But you can't really claim that that's, like the way that you do things because according to WHO regulations, that's not how it's done.
E está a ser feito algum trabalho para explicar isso ou o Ministério da Saúde prefere que as coisas funcionem e continuem a funcionar assim? Porque it seems like se nós separarmos o pessoal tradicional, que agora esqueci-me do nome,
do Instituto?
Sim. Seria muito mais vantajoso para nós, as a country, começarmos a explorar mais essas alternativas, ou não? What do you think?
We're going to get into politics here.
Sim, sem entrar muito em politics.
É vantajoso para...
It's always politics, but,
é vantajoso para o povo, but it's not for government. Because don't forget that we also get funds, right?
Yeah.
We get funds from all of these institutions. We get funds from the WHO. We get pharmaceuticals. We just got a loan of, I don't know how many millions for COVID response. And I mean, if we don't comply and we are not part of that, we don't get all of that. So é vantajoso para o povo, não para quem toma as decisões.
Yeah, that's the way a lot of things work in our country and other African countries.
Yeah. Because if you think about like even the response, I think for the first time the African Union, a lot of presidents were like, all right, I'm gonna just buy this product. Because it wasn't even about like whether it works or not. I think it was about
a stance
and saying, why do we keep looking for solutions outside? And if you like, the Ebola crisis was solved by traditional medicine. It wasn't solved by Western medicine. Like they tried a million things. And it was like a doctor in a lab, like a traditional doctor in
I didn't know this.
Yeah, and that's how it was solved. So, and Nigeria has like a lab response set up for Ebola and other diseases, and they have proven that these things do work. But this is not stuff that is publicized, and this is not stuff that is, and one of the things, and I heard this guy talking about it, like a researcher, and he was saying, the problem is that a lot of these labs exist in crisis mode, and then after the crisis, he was like, my colleagues just bounce and do other things, which is bad because we should keep researching and we should keep trying to figure out how to solve other issues in our health system that are not just,
A ideia não é dismiss por completo Western medicine, mas é só arranjar maneira de coexist e talvez apoiar o outro. Mas quando estamos a falar de lobbies gigantescos de pharmaceuticals e interesses que vão para além do nosso understanding, já...
Yeah, and one of the things, like speaking about like Nigeria and Ebola, like when I went to Lagos, like we were doing this like tour of different places, and one of our case studies was the hospital where they discovered the first case of Ebola in Nigeria. I think it was 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on the year, but so we were doing this case study. And it was quite, for me, it was quite like getting there and everything. Like you like, okay, we have this hospital, this clinic, and all of that. And then some of the nurses that had survived start telling the story, and you're like, oh fuck, like this shit was real. Like seeing their colleagues, die, and like treating this one patient that there's actually a movie about it. It's called 93 Days, something like that. If you look for it or if you Google it, whoever's listening, there's actually a movie that they did about it. But it's something interesting because one of the nurses was saying that her opinion on traditional medicine, you get a lot of things that are obviously influenced by the West. And take this, take 2 of these, and you'll feel better. Take 2 of these pills. Go to the pharmacy. Here's the receta. Here's like and all of that. And she was talking about something like in Nigeria, like I don't know if she still is. She was part of like an association that they're looking into. I think it was with one of the universities, looking into ways in which they can promote more of this traditional healing to a lot of communities. Because like you said, I mean, Mozambique is 80% of people don't have access to the medicines that we do. And she was saying the same thing, that there as well, a lot of people can't afford or don't have the access to a lot of this medicine. So they're looking at ways in which they can create the communication around traditional medicine, what to do when you have this, and so forth. So that's very interesting, and maybe that's something that's happening here, or not really.
Como eu estava a dizer do coexistir, a ideia era mesmo essa, porque, claro, né, tenho uma dor de cabeça, tomo panado,
it works.
Voilà, it works, não é? Mas como tu disseste agora, nem todo mundo tem acesso a isso. Então não restringir. Eu não sabia do que tu acabaste de contar, Wacy, que o pessoal tradicional está a andar de umbrella do Ministério e os hurdles todos que eles têm para conseguirem chegar a algo que seja aprovado clinicamente. Mas my point é, como eu estava a dizer, coexist é que quem não tem acesso ao dito panado, e como panado, só o exemplo, pode ser várias outras maneiras de curar uma doença que seja, mas pode ter acesso a outras plantas e a outra, não é? E é por aí que é pena não haver essa informação para poder passar àqueles que...
I mean, I think it's so it's a catch-22 with the information, because so tu tens Instituto de Medicina Tradicional, which is created by the health system, and And then you have like the different associations which the healers themselves belong to, like Amatramo and Grupo Espiritual. There's like a few, but Amatramo is like the most well-known, I think. And the thing is that there is, and then you have like o Centro de Investigação e Desenvolvimento de Etnobotânica, which is in Namasha. And you have something else in Manisa, I think. And so there are efforts to create different lists and different things, like the way that you were saying, like for dores de barriga, toma esta planta, because this is information that people have. Like, it's known. There are plants that do this, and it's easy access. The thing that you have to make sure that you release with the information that this plant is good for is dosage, right? Because that's the part that becomes a bit tricky, because you need to know, if you're an adult, you can take this much. If you're a child, you should take this much, right? Because with everything, plants can heal, but then a lot of them also have a level of toxicity that you have to be careful that you're not then starting to poison yourself. Like if you take certain plants for like 3 months, then they start to become poisonous. So you have to know that you can't take it for more than 10 days. And then your body needs a break to deal with all the other things, which is the same with any chemical, right? You can't take Panados like every day for 30 days and like not have any sequelae.
Yeah.
So I think, but there's also like a level of protection that's going on, because so the healers are a little bit afraid of losing their clientele. Like it's kind of like, so they feel like if they start telling all the medicines that they use, all the plants that they use for different things,
they won't be needed anymore.
It's like, so people will go to a pharmacy, which is not true, because I mean, we have pharmacies, but we still go to doctors. So there's still, I think there's an importance of this person who's a healer that is beyond the plant. And I think that, so there's an education that needs to happen both ways. Yeah. The healer themselves need to understand that their role is much more than just administering a plant, so that they won't be replaced by my knowledge of what plant is used for what. But, there's things that are important, because, for example, if you just go and administer a plant on your own, it could be something that is good for a headache, but it lowers your blood pressure. And those are informations that you need somebody who truly is trained and understands to give you. And it's not just putting together this concoction of plants and, oh, I'm going to be okay. It's like you have to know how to mix that. So I think there's both of that. I do think that we still have a long way to go in terms of sort of coexisting, like the Western medicine. And because if you think about it, the ideal situation was to put traditional medicine first, because it does less damage to your body. We all know that chemicals have a longer lasting effect. But that's not going to happen anytime soon for all the reasons that we stated before. In a lot of countries, and I always use this example because I think it's like, so Germany, right, which is one of the biggest pharmaceuticals, I'm not going to say the name, I
know what it is.
The magic blue pill.
And the first course of treatment in Germany now, when you go to a doctor, is natural medicine. So your doctor is required to give you homeopathic treatment first. Mm-hmm. And then if it doesn't work, they will give you chemical treatment.
Yeah.
But they still push one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. But in their country, they realized.
Minha mulher estava na Holanda, ficou com uma dor de cabeça e queria comprar medicamentos na farmácia. E eles não deixaram.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works. Primeiro tu vais take outra. Eles não, they don't push, como tu estás a dizer, they don't push the chemicals logo eles tentam tu cures sozinha em casa ou faças outro tipo de tratamento.
Like
mais.
those rubs, like rub,
Já não,
rub oils.
Tu não tens acesso tão fácil como nós temos cá, over the counter, antibióticos e todo o tipo de droga que nós cá vais a uma farmácia and you just buy them.
And also like the pharmacies there, like if going back to Germany, half the pharmacy is natural. So you have an option of like your equivalent of a panado, but like plant-based, you know? So it's like the easiness of taking a pill, but it's all plant-based. So the difference is that, of course, the natural takes longer. So people are impatient because, you know, you take a panado, it's in half an hour, your headache is gone. You take something plant-based, it might take a few hours, but it does work. So this is the thing that I find it interesting that here we're so stuck on the chemicals and, you know, the Western world is going back. And we're walking away from our own tradition. And it's right there. Like, vais a Macaneta, vais a Marroquin.
Yeah.
All of that. You know, I bought a terreno earlier this year. I feel so grown. I know, right? I'm like, like now I feel Mozambican. I'm like, oh my God.
Agora vai ser, vou ter que fazer muro.
No. So I have this whole thing. I've been talking to my architect. I don't understand the mindset of the muro. We were discussing and she was like, vais fazer muro? I'm like, hell no. O muro custa uma casa. That is... I'm sorry.
To make sure that people don't take your shit.
Yeah. I'm sorry for all the people who are like muro.
Pro muro.
It is the dumbest thing ever. I'm sorry. It is. I'm so sorry to offend you. I know that you think that this is like the plan, but it makes no sense. What are you protecting? There's nothing in the land. Like it makes more sense to start with something and then protecting. Like you protecting an empty plot of land.
Yeah. Unless you're growing stuff.
No, people, acho que eu não sei, eu não tenho terreno, nunca fiz muro. So,
that's what you're saying officially. Nós
sabemos. Eu
sabemos.
acho que ele tem terreno e tem muro.
Tu queres o muro, so people don't steal your shit. Tipo, teus blocos, teu cimento, tua areia, all that shit. If you just leave it there, people just take it.
Nada, meu.
So you need a muro, Wacy.
Nada, não faz sentido essa cena. Não faz sentido absolutamente nenhum. Like, muros custam like $100,000. What the fuck? That doesn't make any
sense. That's a fancy muro, huh?
Hey,
yeah, that's very class A of muros.
Hey, mas se tu tens terreno grande, like, it's not very hard to have expensive. It just doesn't make sense. Like, there's other ways to do fencing. For example, like wires and like, I don't know. There's like more cost-effective ways to do fencing than... sorry, it's just...
Barbed wire.
This is like a recent discussion. I was like, that makes no sense. But, okay.
Or barbed wire.
But yeah, no, so the reason why I was bringing up this terreno, it wasn't just like a show-off, like, oh, I have a terreno. That's nothing interesting. But...
Flex.
Yeah, I know. I can flex. I'm a grown-up guy. But, so the terreno, and this is the reason why I bought it, is because it had a lot of plants, right? And the first thing that the guy podemos limpar o terreno. I'm like, don't touch anything. And they were like, what? You're a weirdo.
You don't want a muro and you don't let us take the plants.
They looked at me like, what are you doing? And I was like, you can't take this out because this is all medicine. And they were like, huh? But you saw the Bruce. And I was like, let me school you. So like we went around and I was like, this is for that. Like the ones that I knew, because I don't know all of them yet. And then, you know, like I brought in my teacher and she went around and she showed like all the other uses for the plants that I didn't know. And they were like, oh, but we just burn the stuff. I was like, yeah. And then you go to the pharmacy and you buy it and you had it in your backyard and you could have just solved a health issue right here. But you don't, you know, people don't know that. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that's happening with a lot of like traditional healers, they're having to travel further and further out of the city to find these medicines because people just buy land and they clear to make mashamba. But the medicine has more value than cabbage, for example. And if you understood the value of that plant, you would probably harvest that. So people could be making like bank.
Yeah, eu lembro de pensar nisso, tu estás a falar agora, quando dia, não sei onde é que foi, mas acho que foi na África do Sul que eu vi pacotes de pills de moringa.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Nós estamos cheios disto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
E ninguém faz nada. Tá vendo? Mas, meanwhile, atravessamos a fronteira, vejo aquilo numa loja mais bonita. Está dentro de uma cápsula.
There's a guy in Durban that is producing that.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how easy it is to make those pills?
Yeah.
Like the easiest thing in the world. Easiest thing in the world. But I'm not going to tell you because that's my next project. But...
Então são essas coisas todas. Sempre tu tens... e podemos até... Podes falar do Gonozororo, de TET também, que as pessoas...
That's
Viagra. Yeah. Então tens...
Natural Viagra.
Yeah.
Yo, people take that like...
For the gentlemen that are listening to this.
Compram a versão chinesa que é o furumbao. People like, how the fuck do you know this, Marcio? Yes, I know it.
we weren't going to question. We're not.
Mas só para dizer que...
Doing research for a friend.
Existe muito produto local, como tu acabaste de dar o exemplo das plantas todas que tinhas no teu terreno, que that we just dismiss e vamos comprar fora. E possivelmente muitas das coisas vêm daqui, vão para lá, and then they come back.
Oh, absolutely. There is...
With a nicer package.
Thinking of, talking about...
And instructions.
There's a Dutch couple that has uma plantação de moringa in Nampula, and they export to the Netherlands. There's a company here that is doing cacana pills. And I remember like being stuck in Ilha de Mozambican, and I had like an allergic reaction to crab, I think. And they didn't have any anti-allergens or anything, na ilha. And I was like, okay, this is going to be fun. So my host, because I was in an Airbnb, she had uma plantação de aloe vera. So, because my skin broke out and, I was like, okay, think fast. And I was like, okay, cacana. So I went and I bought these cacana pills.
I told you.
I know, but it works. It's amazing and efficient. And so I was taking the pills, but also like my skin was breaking out. So I was like, okay, what can you do for this?
Were you taking the cacana pills?
Yeah, I was taking.
Okay, cacana pills must be easy.
Yeah, but then so then I opened the capsules and I was making like this paste with the aloe vera and the cacana, and I put it on my skin. And I remember like going to dinner and meeting this doctor, and he was like, what are you taking? And I was like, oh, I took this and I put this paste in. And he was like,
what smell is this?
No, he was like, and it wasn't even that. It was like, to him, it was like, how did you know to do that? Like, how did you know that this, he was like, he was reading the bottle. It was like, actually, what you did makes sense. It works. But how did you know to do that? And I was like, well,
how do you know, Wacy?
When I was a kid and I had sarampo, they gave us banho de folhas de cacana. So it means that it probably healed. Like, it was just like, it was instinctive, thinking that, if se a água de cacana acalma tipo breakout de sarampo, then it must work on an allergy breakout, because there's something, I don't know the chemical composition, but there's something that is going to help heal whatever is happening. And that was really, it wasn't even like the fact that I had just become a healer. That's not what kicked in. It was like my instinct and the memory of tomar banho de água de cacana. And I was like, oh, that.
Mas agora,
let's try.
Mesmo, tipo, agora nem te perguntei, como é que tu sabes? Como é que how did you become a healer? Tipo, para quem tiver ouvido, para quem esteja interessado, how do you do that?
Well, first of all, you live in Hulen for a year. Well, no, not specifically Hulen. You live wherever.
Initiation, that's it.
I'm moving in.
No, but it's like, so I guess you have a calling of some sorts, and it looks different for other people. Like in South Africa, for some reason, people tend to think that the calling, people tend to say that the calling comes with an illness. Like you first get sick and then thank God that wasn't the way that my calling came. And like there were other bizarre things that happened, but not specifically being like very seriously ill.
Or on your deathbed.
Or on my deathbed or anything like that. But my grandmother was the healer. So I think in my family it was like a waiting game, kind of like who's gonna be next.
Somebody gotta step up.
and you know, like I've always, if I like after, you know, like with hindsight, I've always been very intuitive and I've always like had very realistic dreams. Like I'll dream of something and it happens. But of course you don't really connect it to you having this gift. And then I guess there was a point where it was kind of obvious that that's what the calling was about. And it was really, I think there's a lot of people who decide not to go forward with it and just deal with the consequences. And I'm very like solution based. And I also, so I was like, well, if this is what it is, then I'm just going to deal with it. But also it didn't really make sense for me to deny a gift just because of like what the social connotation of the practice is, because of all the taboos. Because I think like if you're called to healing, you can't really say no to that. Like, how do you say no to have the ability to help?
Então, para além das plantas e do uso das plantas para vários ailments, não é?
Mm-hmm.
Também tem componente mais místico com isto tudo?
Yeah. So there are different kinds of healers. There are healers who just deal with plants, which you call them nyangarum, which is somebody who's like a herbalist. And then you have healers who have both the ability to know about plants and to be mediums, which is like your nyanga curandeiro that you know, Sankoma in South Africa. And I have both. So I'm a medium in layman terms, shaman, whatever you want to call it. And I'm a herbalist at the same time. So it's a kind of interesting thing to exist as that in a modern setting. Because if you think about like most healers are a bit secluded from social circles. They don't really engage with people as much. Like they kind of like build a hut somewhere and people come to them and they don't really socialize. And because of my work, I've never really had that barrier. So I kind of had to learn to exist as this person who is a medium and a healer and a designer and young person, kind of. And it's been interesting, to say the least. I think it's a learning curve. But I do think that more and more healers like me will start existing. I think most people are afraid of the taboos and the labels. And luckily enough, I don't care. So I think I also, because I don't care, I also felt a bit responsible to be open about it.
And educate people on it.
And to encourage other people to accept the gift without it being labeled. And it was kind of like a statement to say, hey, look, I'm here, I'm normal. Nothing, I didn't sort of change and become something else because of the gift. Like, I tend to think that it's not that you have to change to accept the gift. I think you're picked because of who you are. So the gift comes to you because, it would come because you're Marcio, not because Marcio then has to become something else. Like there's something specific about who you are that they want this gift to come through you because there's a purpose for that, And it could simply just be to change mindsets or it could be something bigger. But I think that we all have different purposes and it's not like we have to change to accommodate those purposes, but we have those purposes because of who we are. I don't know, maybe that's what I tell myself to fall asleep.
eu no último ano tenho estado a ler bocadinho mais acerca desses assuntos todos. Tenho estado a pesquisar. Por exemplo, o Hugo também emprestou-me um livro do Christopher Ryan, que é Civilized Death, que ele fala muito acerca da
plug
hunter-gatherers e como é que eles funcionavam e quote-unquote civilização deles, como é que eles eram antes. E há muito esse componente da parte mística, que é o uso das plantas, e que hoje também, por exemplo, se as pessoas forem pesquisar, quiserem pesquisar acerca disto, tens um jornalista muito bom que é Michael Pollan, que ele fez um livro agora que é How to Change Your Mind, acerca de psychedelics, e fala, e tem essa parte que psychedelics como psilocybin, ayahuasca, peyote, que são tudo produtos nacionais, tradicionais, e podem tratar anxiety, e há vários estudos. A MARPA, que é uma associação no Canadá, if I'm not mistaken, que eles fazem esses testes todos, clinical trials com mushrooms, magic mushrooms, que é a psilocybin, e provam, e há vários estudos que provam, que ajuda bastante na anxiety, e as pessoas que têm cancro e que não conseguem deal with it, conseguem curar addiction, e as soon as, tipo, passado só uma sessão de terapia e de consumo daquelas substâncias. Portanto, e digo isto porque tenho estado a ver isto de maneira a tentar shift a minha cabeça, ou abrir my mind, para poder conseguir receber a informação que tu estás-me a dar agora. Sem of course I'm a bit skeptical. É normal ser skeptical. É normal tu olhares um bocadinho and you frown and you're like, what the fuck. Mas acho que a maior parte das pessoas, incluindo eu, que também sou culpado disto, nós quando não percebemos algo, ou quando estamos tão habituados a falar mal, ou ouvir falar mal, ou aquela informação está um bocado como os curandeiros, e os curandeiros estão a vender snake oil, estás a ver? That's it.
That too.
Sim, com certeza que existe, né? Não há nenhum, como também há médicos piratas, né? Então isso vai, como há qualquer tipo de pessoa, em qualquer profissão que não faz menos do que diz.
I think it's not even about pirataria. It's just like with everything, there's good and there's, well, if you want to like simplify it and say there's good and there's bad, it's not just as simple as that. But there is a difference between curandeiro e feiticeiro, right? And that's a very important difference. And just if we want to break down the word curandeiro, it tells you what it does, right? Cura. So anybody that's not practicing it for that purpose is not really a curandeiro. Porque curandeiro é sobre cura, é sobre curar. E não é só curar uma doença física, you know, curandeiro was like the equivalent. So, you know, in modern times, you have like a lawyer, and then you have a psychologist, and you have a doctor. And back then you had a curandeiro, which filled a lot of roles. So he was your counselor, he was the person who you know, took care of issues with justice, roubos, não sei quê, and he healed. And then you have the not so great side of it, the bad side of it, which is like the feiticeiro, the people who, the snake oils and flying whatever, and people who are like using and abusing of this knowledge and power to achieve other things, ganancias, tipo. It does happen that people use this to gain power. Just like with anything, like humans are easily corrupted. So if you give anybody power, so you have a gift and it's power, and then you have to decide what you're going to use for it. Are you going to use for light work, for dark work? They both going to work. And you have the exact same capacity to do both. But it's a choice. Like you have to decide how you're going to employ this gift. And I think what happens is that it's a lot more interesting and it's a lot more fun to talk about the darker side of it. It's, of course, it's natural, and anything like that gets more press, if you want to call it that, in simpler terms. So I think it's important to acknowledge that they both exist, and to kind of not say, like, I could be like, isso não existe, não vamos falar disso. It exists. And on top of that, there are the false prophets, right? They're the people who are neither curandeiros nor feiticeiros, but they are opportunists. And they take advantage of people's pain and despair. And they will tell you absolutely anything that you need to hear, because a lot of people, what happens here is that people go to curandeiros when they are desperate, when they see their lives falling apart. So they need help. And what happens is if you fall into the bad hands, you're going to fall into the hands of somebody who's not really there to help you, but who's really there to take advantage of your weakness at that moment. And that happens a lot. And that has started happening more. So you have even people who are curandeiros will take advantage because it's easy money. No, but not just because it's easy money, but also because less and less people have started to look for curandeiros. So it's also a survival if you think about it. Because that person that comes to see them, that one person that decides, they need to make sure that that person stays as long as possible so that they can keep having an income. So then you start having the false diagnosis.
Nessa perspectiva, podemos olhar também para muitas das religiões, muitas das novas igrejas, não é só do lado tradicional, né? Temos o lado mais quote-unquote ortodoxo, né? Mais aceitável, que também acontece muito isso.
All of it. Yeah. And I think that just all of it just speaks to human nature. Like, we're so corrupt on so many levels. Like, it's crazy how something that could be good can easily be transformed into something that is like just awful. And I think that happens in with everything. And I think it's important. And it's also important to speak about, how did curandeiros become a bad thing? How did it become taboo? And it's quite logical if you think about it. You know,
I would blame religion.
Exactly. But it's obvious. Like, I mean, if I was, you know, a conquistador or whatever, and I was coming on a crusades, I would have done the same. You know, like, I don't need the competition. So eu vou te fazer pensar that your traditional whatever is dark and evil, because there are some aspects of it. So I can amplify that and make you think that it's all about that. And so that, imagine, like, you're part of that, but you still understand that there's some things that are not so good. But the further you are removed from it, so as a child of the person who was part of that, now the only thing that stays are the evil parts, because now they've gone into the church. So now they're going to tell you, não, aquilo ali é mau, tem espírito mau, e tu entras nesse mundo, não sei quê. But this is the thing that happens in Mozambique that I still think is a bit crazy. The parent will tell the child that it's bad, but the parent still goes. Which is like, so are we bad or not? Like, which one? So there's that part, right? And so it becomes really hard, I think, to separate the two. And what's starting to happen, actually, which I think is interesting, is that our generation is trying to find a voice of their own around these issues. They're trying to understand, like, how do we start to, like, because they're reading more, they trying to get knowledge for themselves. So the taboos are going away because people are questioning. If it's so bad, you know, and can you write it all off? Because there's also that, like, can you separate the two? Because there's the very simple part of it, which is just like the herbal understanding and medicine. And then there's a more mystical thing part of it, which I think is a harder thing to grasp. And it's not just about the African traditions in general. I think the world is not ready for those things that we can't explain. Like, it's just scary that there's this whole universe. And I'm a healer, and I was skeptical. And I was like, psh. I remember, like, the first day, if you want to call it, I was just like, yo, this is crazy. I don't even know what I'm doing here. But I was like, you know, my rational brain is like playing tricks on me, because I'm like, I mean, I don't even know how this, I mean, is this really real? Like, I think I just want to believe that. And then something happens, you're like, oh, shit, this is real. But then you don't even know how to explain it, because it's just happening to you, and you don't have a vocabulary to share that. So then you're like, how the fuck do I tell these humans that this is real in a way that is not going to scare them and be like, okay, I think Wacy's lost the plot. But like, there's a whole world of things that we don't understand. And even as a healer, I have so much work to do to truly, truly understand and reach my potential, because I have so many blockages. I'm scared to go deeper because I've seen glimpses of it and I'm like, I don't know. Do I get to come back from that? Like, is that like is that a path I want to really go down? And, like, I've been asked, do you want to try ayahuasca? I'm like, yo, the way my shit is set up, I don't know. Like, do I want to open that door? Because I will not be able to shut it. That's just the reality of it. And the truth is, most of us, not even most of us, all of us are naturally intuitive, and we all have healing capacities that have been kind of written out of our systems by, like the inputs and everything else, because it's not really interesting to have a world of healers. Can you imagine? Like, there would be no war, no capitalism, no, like, that just wouldn't really be possible. So you kind of had to change the way, or reprogram the way humans work for all of this to be able to exist. But if you tap into it, if you think about it, we all have a level of healing capabilities, like some more than others, of course. But I really believe that that's how humans are born. Like, there's something, like, I remember the first time that I was meditating, I did this like 10-day meditation course, Vipassana. And because I'm a curious person, I had already become a healer, and I was like still on this journey of like healing myself. And I'm still on that journey because I think it's continuous. So I did this 10-day meditation course, and it's like 10 days of silence. So you're just alone with your thoughts, and you're learning how to meditate and to access different parts of your brain.
10 days of silence.
10 days of silence. It's amazing. It's hard, but it's so amazing. I recommend. Because
But no fim, guys, there's so much that I want to tell you guys about.
No, but it is. But also, like,
backlog the 10 dias.
Yeah. So like, not even like, but like right after. So like right after, there's like, after the session, you like, because there's a lot of people who do it with you, and you're all together in a space. So everybody, like, for the first 24 hours, everybody just talks nonstop. And it's like, oh my God, this is exhausting. Because you're going through all of these things on your own, and we're not used to that, right? Because we always externalize everything. Something happens, it's so-and-so's fault, or this fault, or the weather, or whatever. And in this instance, when you're meditating and you're in silence, everything is just about you. You don't get to externalize. So everything comes up, all your demons, all the past breakups, the arguments that you didn't finish, like you have them in your head. It's crazy, but it's really interesting. So to me, it started opening up. So the deeper I went into this meditation, of course, my gift was becoming more and more, I guess, open or in tune. I don't know what the word is. And so there were things that I was like being able to like feel and understand that were like, yo, if you do that with 10 days of meditation, can you imagine if like you meditated like your whole life? Which I think in the end, like that's what probably like enlightenment is about, is that people who just meditate to the point where they don't really block, like your rational mind isn't like the thing that blocks you from understanding the universe, I guess. Because we get like the different inputs. I actually forgot why I started this point, but it's fine.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
But yeah, so I think there's like all these, so there's all these tools, and I think meditation is definitely one of them that can help you to achieve different kinds of understanding of how...
Nós estamos a falar de como é que este conceito todo, ou estas experiências, como é que foram diluídas ao passar das gerações, passando de geração em geração.
Yeah, and I think in the end, I really think that it's just convenient that people didn't really subscribe to it anymore.
Mas tu não achas também que existe uma responsabilidade das pessoas que praticam isto de educar o resto? Porque, como tu dizes, por exemplo, tu és a primeira pessoa que eu estou a falar acerca disto que eu conheço, que eu tipo I just lost my virginity when it comes to curandeiros today.
I'm gonna quote you on that one.
Yeah.
Então,
I was saying that too loud.
Então não cabe a quem aos praticantes disto conseguirem transmitir de uma forma mais clara e menos
with open
wacky,
mind.
quote unquote, para quem que não percebe. Não é? Por isso é que eu estava a dizer acerca da informação, acerca de educar as pessoas, porque é normal nós olharmos e vemos que eu não acredito, porque eu não percebo. Mas se eu não percebo, como é que eu vou acreditar uma coisa que eu não percebo?
O maior problema é que quem pratica, there are very, very few. They're starting to have more now. The majority of curandeiros também são analfabetos, right? So they don't even know how to explain that to you in a way that makes sense to you. They can communicate that on their level to the people who understand things the way that they understand. That's why in most rural settings, you have people who do both, who go to church and go to curandeiros, because they have an understanding that one doesn't negate the other. Like, there's an understanding that God created everything. So religion is just another expression of spirituality, actually. But it's just, structured in a different way. But if you think about some of the things that happen within religious organizations and the way that they express and the way, it's technically the same thing. Like the lighting of candles, like if you want to break it down like in simple things, like in Catholicism, you have angels, right? And the angels are like the in-between God and humans. In African traditional religions, you have your ancestors, who are the in-between God and humans. And they both messengers. You have guardian angels. And then people believe that they're protected by their ancestors. Is it not kind of similar? And then there is like this idea that people have this misunderstanding that Africans praise the ancestors and not God. But I think what they don't understand is that Africans understand that their ancestors are a direct link to God. And the thing is that if there's somebody sitting beside God that knows you directly, that you can name, like, grandma, put in a good word for me. That sounds a little bit more interesting than Angel Gabriel, who's looking over like a million and million people all over the world. So I think it's about different ways of looking at the same thing. And when you have this different lens, then you can sort of understand that the person who told the story told it in a way that was convenient for them. Because they needed you to think that it was something completely different. They needed you to think that it was something better.
So they told you a story, basically.
Yeah. They just kind of, and if you think about, I think, so what's starting to happen in a lot of African countries, when you start to get younger and younger healers who've gone to college, who are educated, who are, have access to social media, a lot of these myths are being broken. And I think the biggest example of that, and I think it's so cool, is South Africa. Like South Africa, they have a lot of issues, but I think it's so interesting how traditional healing is such a huge trend now with young people.
Yeah.
And young people are just connecting with it in different ways. And they, you have traditional healers with offices in Sandton.
Yeah.
Which is like...
True story, yeah.
Dope. Like when you start having more of that here, because here, there's so many doctors no Hospital Central that are healers. So many lawyers, so many people that are healers, but you don't know that they're healers because it's like a worst kept secret type of thing. It's like a secret society, like they all members of. So the people who are healers know that they're healers, but the general public doesn't know, which I think is BS. Because I think that
I was about to say that.
So that's what the Illuminati is.
Something like that, because like if you understood that this is a part of you and this is a part of society, why hide it? Why not?
Yeah, por isso que eu perguntei, não é da responsabilidade de quem é.
I think it is
para educar o resto.
I think it is. That's why, like, regardless of what people, I think that that's not even a word, and I've been using that all my life. But regardless, yeah, that's one of those. Like you make up some words and whatever. But regardless of what people are gonna say or think, I think that part of my responsibility as living proof is to speak about it openly, is to be as genuine and truthful as I can about it. I don't know everything. I can't treat everybody. I can't treat a lot of things. There are a lot of things that I still don't know how to heal. And I think personally, some of the things that I do think that need to change about healing practices here is that I don't think that people are taught to heal necessarily. Mm-hmm. People are taught to be healers, but they don't learn to heal during the time that they're training. They learn information about healing, like they learn plants, they learn tools, but they don't really learn to heal because healing is such a sensitive thing. And how can you heal if you're broken, right? So the first thing about your healing journey should be about healing that person because you're removing them from like, I call it a normal human existence because I consider everybody else just mere humans. But that's just like the fun thing that I do in my head. I'm like, yeah, those human people. Anyway, but like, imagine you're
sensitive topic right now.
I know. I'm just kidding. It's just
you peasants.
Exactly like that in my head. That's exactly how I think about it. I'm just kidding. Not really. But so if you think about it, you're taken from this human existence where everything happens to you. You get heartbroken, you get disappointment, and you have like your own psychological traumas that happen. And then one day you find out that you have this gift, and then you're supposed to just be a healer. But you still have those traumas. You still have your anxieties and your insecurities. And unless you heal that, it's going to be very hard for you to help somebody, like truly help somebody. Like I remember one of my first experiences as a young healer, and I was like, oh, fuck, this is not going to be fun. This young man came because he heard there was like a young healer who spoke Portuguese, because that's the thing also, there's not like a lot that speak Portuguese fluently, and that, even better that speaks English, right? That's like the jackpot. So you don't even have to like...
You're like a unicorn in the world of,
right?
Of curandeiros.
Yes. I've done some readings in French, which was like that was really hard. But anyway, so he came because he had broken up with his girlfriend. Guy must have been like 22. And so I studied psychology. Instantly, like my psych brain went, because I was like, okay, this is therapy. Let's hear him out. And he's talking about, and he was like, can you give me something so I could forget her? I was like, in my head, I was like, what the fuck? But, this is...
Have you tried alcohol?
Epa, no meu tempo. Chamava as pessoas bradas, and that was it. And you cried about it for like 2 days, and then moving on. And then you would go to Boozy and fall in love the next day and keep it moving. But I couldn't say that because clearly he was like hurting. And I was like, all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. So I'm like, so are you absolutely sure that you want to forget her? Yeah, I want to forget her. And I was like, okay, let me see what I can do, but I need you to think about, because if I do this, it's irreversible. So this is me just testing him to figure out. So then he went from wanting to forget his girlfriend to wanting me to help him to win her back. Right? So clearly he was just like, I just need to get rid of like this pain. Again, alcohol would have helped, but you can't prescribe that. But and that's not the sort of thing. I didn't say that, Mom. That's not the kind of thing that you want to say. It's not a responsible thing. So he kept insisting that, you know, I needed to do something to bring her back, and something that he could either take or, and I was like, you know, I can give you a bath and you have to think about like what you want to attract, but for it to work, you can't contact her. You can't. Because he was harassing her. So that's really what the problem was. The problem wasn't that he couldn't win her back. The problem was that his mindset was that she was his, and his mind was just not accepting the breakup. And the more he contacted her, the worse it made. So there's nothing really you can do to change that unless the person respects the boundary. But how do you get somebody to respect the boundary that the mind is not there? So I had to trick him into thinking that I was doing something, which I wasn't, by telling him like the only way this magic is going to work is if you don't contact the other person for like 15 days. And guess what? It worked, because she was given space. And that's all she wanted. She wanted to come to the decision on her own and not be pressured into whatever it is that he thought, you know, needed to be resolved right there, right then. And I think a lot of us fall under this whole idea of magic, and it's not really about magic. Sometimes it's just about respecting boundaries, and it's about respecting the other person. And it's not about getting your boyfriend to like marry you by engarrafaring, just understanding that he's not ready. Just get there first. Like, you've just met. Like, how many people come and like, I met this guy and I really want to marry him. And I'm like, I don't have anything for that. I don't do that. Oh, but do you know, I could know, but I don't. It's just not something that I do because it doesn't make any sense in my head. But I know people who do it if you really want to do it, but it's stupid, because all that is telling me is that you're desperate. Nobody likes desperate. 2, do you know this guy after like 3 months? What the hell? Who would even advise you?
They would expect you to bring out like tarot cards as well, you know, while you're at it.
All of those things. But like the thing is, people, we are such an immediate society, right? We're just so impatient. We don't let things develop naturally. Like, I meet Hugo and I'm like, okay, I'm 38. Dude, I got like 2 years. This dude needs to fall in love with me right now so that we can get together and have some babies and get married. And it's like, do you even know if he's a psychopath? Are you? No?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
we laugh, but that's yeah.
This is...
I actually know, I actually personally know 1 or 2 people that have done that.
I know hundreds. But like, and when I say hundreds, I mean like most of the requests and a lot of the things around.
You know people que engarrafou? Is that what you're saying?
Dude. Have you been living under a rock? Where you been living?
Martha's like, what? Am I okay? Is there a way to check that? Is this real? And, you know, and that's, you know, I've had some friends who are like, because they've been told by whoever, like, foste engarrafado. And then my friend was like, what the hell, man? Are they saying that the things that I feel, I don't feel? That makes no sense. I love her. And I was like, yo. So this thing of telling people that they engarrafado is really fucked up, because it's true. How do you tell somebody that what they feeling is not what they feeling? Like, what the hell? Does that even make sense? Can you really argue with somebody? Like, if I came to you and said, Marcio, I'm sorry, but your wife engarrafou, you don't really love her. Is that something like?
Yeah,
can
it
you,
makes no sense.
Exactly. Like, what the hell is that? Like, why would you even say that to somebody? Like, it's
We're
like,
laughing, but it happens.
It happens, but it's like, how do you even explain that? And how do you explain? Because,
por exemplo, eu pessoalmente, eu não acredito nisso. Eu pessoalmente não acredito.
Yeah.
Mas then again, going back para aquilo que estamos a falar, porque também nunca me foi explicado como é que funciona, e mesmo se fosse explicado, tu não consegues wrap your mind around that.
And that's why it works, right? Because there's so many people who don't even believe that it exists. And if there's so many people who don't even believe that it exists, it means that the people who do and understand the power of it can just play with it at whim. Like, they just get to experiment and play and trial and error. And that's the thing, because if
Isso é o tal famoso cheirinho do loló.
there's so many different.
Have you heard about that?
I haven't heard.
What?
That I actually haven't heard about it. But
What is that?
Não, nunca viste isso?
Não,
Epá,
nunca vi.
eu já vi umas cenas que é que tipo, umas imagens que o homem é que, por causa da nossa da sociedade como pensa, que o homem é que lava roupa, lava a louça, faz tudo, não sei o quê, e as pessoas dizem que isso é o cheirinho de loló.
like está engarrafado. Yeah, that's the narrative. Like,
Oh, is that what it means? Okay.
like anybody who.
Acho eu, atenção, posso estar
No,
enganado.
it's one of the things. So anybody who, and this is the thing, any
This
man
is crazy.
in Africa, right? Any man who is a decent guy, who actually does his part in his household because he lives there and he should. Because, I mean, if you're going to eat and you're going to sleep in this house, you should contribute as an adult, right? But in Africa, if a man does that, like if your mother walks in and you're washing dishes in your house, your house, not somebody else's house. This is your house that you live in. These are your kids that you're bathing, not, your cousin's kids. No, your kids. You're engarrafado. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this guy is taking care of his kids and his household and washing the dishes that he ate from. And that means that he's engarrafado? That makes no sense. But like, and there's like different, different things of, there are people who believe in this because there are people who are apparently happily married. And I would say apparently because that's what the wife believes. And then they leave them for somebody else. And ele absolutamente foi engarrafado pela outra. Because again, in his right mind, right? So that's the external thing that had to have happened. Because that's the only way she can explain.
A conversa do feitiço.
A conversa do feitiço e a conversa do mental illness, right?
Yeah.
Because in her mind, for her to accept that her husband left her can only be with an external force. Because my man would never, in his right mind, give up our shitty marriage for somebody else. Because sometimes the marriage was shitty before, but I mean, it's their shitty marriage. So she cannot take any blame or accept responsibility for all of the things that didn't happen in that marriage. So it's easier to explain it away with foi engarrafado. And the thing is, so here's the thing that a lot of people don't, and this is like a trade secret, right? Tu não pode engarrafar somebody that doesn't have any feelings for you. It's not gonna work. That's like the premises.
Spoiler alert to whoever's listening.
Spoiler alert. Hi.
Yeah, whoever's taking notes.
If
you're taking notes, and if this is the please, I don't quote me on any of this, and please don't come looking for me to do any of it because I'm not. But that's another thing. Like, you can't, because how do people magically grow feelings for you?
Yeah, esse é o motivo também, dos motivos porque que eu não acredito na tal história do.
So usually.
Hey, by the way, por que se chama engarrafada? Do you know the origin dessa?
Because there's different methods, right? And again, trade secret. And one of them is literally putting
in a bottle.
Putting okay.
Like a mixture of things, like medicamentos and private items and things, and putting them in a bottle and throwing.
Eu já apanhei uma garrafa dessas no.
Don't touch that shit.
Na praia.
That's the thing. What do you think?
Tecidos enrolados. Like, what the fuck is this?
Dude, that was somebody. Did you take it away? Maybe you holding somebody.
Maybe someone's or maybe someone's looking for you.
Alguém tá no seu ano, tipo, why isn't my shit working?
You fucked up a whole marriage, yo.
Yeah,
that
dude.
shit was ready, and you just, man.
That's why you have, what is it called? Like those stories they have in some movies where like someone puts a message in a bottle and then it sails away and then it will reach some island or somewhere shore. It will reach shore and then someone will get that message.
Possivelmente tens várias ligações com essas histórias que são mais populares, com histórias mais tradicionais. Sempre tens, quando falaste do não consegues fazer ninguém apaixonar, só fall for you, eu pensei logo no Genie do Aladdin.
Yeah.
Ver? Que é uma das cenas que ele diz logo ali, que eu não posso fazer ninguém fall in love with you, não posso fazer whatever.
Yeah, but like the
então,
first curandeiro
talvez
that we
haja
all...
uma ligação somehow.
Exactly, like the great Christina Aguilera said.
What?
I'm a genie in a bottle, baby.
God.
Come and let me out.
You did not quote Christina Aguilera. Wow. But I was gonna say, like, so thinking about popular
culture. Yeah, pop culture.
Like the first curandeiro that we all ran into was in Asterix y Obelix, right?
Yes.
The guy with the magic.
Idefix.
Yeah.
Like,
no Idefix?
Yes.
No?
What's his name?
O druida, né?
Druida. So like, okay, you know, the guy with the magic potion and, you know, he was like doing all of this. So,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Just can't remember the name.
Can't remember his name.
Yeah.
So what is he? Curandeiro, like he has magic potions and those are all herbs and he's like putting things in and tem um caldeirão and all of these movies that we watch about like witches and you know, like whatever Claude, no sei que.
Panoramix.
Something like that guy, Panoramix. But like, so that's the first curandeiro, right? And if you think about like all the King Lears and all of those King James movies, there was always King Arthur. There was always a curandeiro there, and he was the sage. He was the one who helped them to make intelligent decisions because either he could kind of see what the outcome of some of the decisions would be. Even before going to war, they would do like rituals. You know, like same thing here. Those rituals exist. So there are some things that are across all cultures. Witches were burnt because, you know, they were more powerful than the church. And this is something that is known. It's not that what they did was evil. It was because they knew too much and they could see too much. And it was just like a nuance. Like, again, it was just something that just didn't need to exist, basically, you know? So I think, of course, there's like the fun anecdotal stuff that we were just talking about that you can make jokes with, which I think is important to also do and talk about it in that way so that you're translating this into something that people can understand. But I always say, so I think, again, it's about understanding and being responsible with your gift. Yeah. So there are things that you can do to manipulate your daily existence. There are things because you know that you can use this gift to, I don't know, get ahead but it's really, and I really think that it's karmic. So it's your decision. And it means that if you do use or misuse this gift, you need to understand what the consequences might be. If you do choose to engarrafar somebody, understand that the day that you get tired, that motherfucker ain't going nowhere because he's tied to you. So unless you could find
some... praia procurar aquela garrafa.
Yeah. Mas tens que ir à praia procurar aquela garrafa mesmo. Or find somebody that knows how to undo it. And then you have things like, so there's this theory, and I don't know how, because this is just like the stories that I hear. So apparently one of the things that happens con tu engarrafas is that this person's like now stuck to you And then there's like, so they become possessive because, you know, there's like this whole contract of ownership that's been done between the two of you. And let's say now you change your mind. So like, I engarrafar Ugo and then I meet Marcio and I'm like, yeah, let me. So, but Ugo's
go back to
like,
my potions.
Yeah, no. But so the contract is can't really just be broken by one person. It has to be broken by both people. And so, you know, cases of like violence and even like the guy react or the girl, whoever it is that was engarrafado, reacting in violent ways and like killing or like explanations of why people commit suicide is like not being able to get rid of this feeling that something is always missing. So there's all these different things that rise from it that you have to be thinking about it when you're playing with this. And what's happening now in the interest of like easy money, a lot of curandeiros are like doing stupid shit, like some 23-year-old coming in and saying, I'm in love with my boyfriend, I want to marry him, and can you engarrafar? What the hell do you know at 23? Like, that's the first thing that you should ask, right? Are you going to really believe I was going to marry my boyfriend at 16 and then the one at 21 and then the one at 30, and I'm not married to any of them. So no, you don't really want to take a 23-year-old's word for the fact that she's like in love and she's met the love of her life and then she needs to do this because it's just about control. At the end of the day, this whole thing about needing to engarrafar is our understanding of what love is. And we think that, and if you think about what television and literature and popular culture does and the way that they talk about love is like the other person belongs to you, right? Então, o engarrafar is kind of like the physical, I think, embodiment of that. It's like now you own the person because, you know, that's your boyfriend or that's my wife. Okay, that's a whole different conversation. But my understanding is that ninguém é de ninguém. We choose to be together every day. It is a choice and it's hard work, but nobody belongs to anybody. People come together and decide to live life side by side for whatever reasons, but we don't have ownership. And when we think about ownership, that's when you start having problems around violence, domestic violence, because it's your property, your girlfriend,
então,
your wife.
Just to make it clear, para eu perceber, tu acreditas que é possível fazer, só que não és apologista desse tipo de prática, is that it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I don't really stand by that because I don't think it's a healthy thing to instill in people. There are a lot of things that are possible to do, but just because it's possible doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the thing. If we're going to talk about all of these things, like it is possible to a lot more than just engarrafar is like the light work, right? But
what?
Engarrafar is the light work because there's a lot of things that happen in this mystical, magical thing that is people's wanting to rise to power, and they will stop at nothing for it, including sacrificing family, kids, you name it. It
goes deep.
Yo, we could do like a whole. What Marvel is nothing. We could do like a whole. If Africans decided to like out all of these stories,
acho que just popped into my mind.
What?
Que todos os filhos, pelo menos dos filhos dos nossos líderes, foi sacrificado. That just came up.
You're just gonna put that out there.
I'm just gonna. I said it. Yes.
Think of it what you will.
If you think about it, if you want to go deeper, going in that train of thought, if you look at every successful family, there's always one person that's been sacrificed for it. There's some.
Mas estás a falar de famílias africanas.
Hey, if you want to limit to Africa, do it. But I'm talking about in general. Globally.
Porque para alguém tem que ter consciência, pela tua linha de raciocínio, alguém tem que ter consciência que isso vai acontecer e tem que fazer esse pacto.
Yeah.
Não é? Então, like, se tu não sabes como é que isso funciona, there's no way you can do it. Correto?
But who told you that this magical realism thing is an African thing? it's not an African thing. It's a global understanding.
Tens América Latina, tens os shamans, aqui tens os curandeiros, nas Europas tens as bruxas, or whatever you want to call
everywhere. So these, and some of these pacts, so there's also a thing about, so the ignorance of not understanding this world or the comfort of, another reason, so there's two things that happen here. So on one aspect, we talked about it earlier, which was like the whole religious thing, right? Which became easier. And then what happened is like some parents or some families took advantage of that. Because if the kids don't know, they can keep making pacts, and you're not going to know how to, like, you're going to think that it's normal stuff that's happening, like just luck, right? Azarado, my life just doesn't go well, and that's because my life just doesn't go well. I mean, I try, but it's just everybody has a path, and some people just unlucky and some people are lucky. So they can get away with that. And when people start knowing and understanding, then they start to question certain things, and they can break some of these pacts. Because I mean, if you didn't make a contract and it was made on your behalf, then once you understand that it exists, you can easily break it because it's not your contract, right? And I think there's also this thing of people who are born into these contracts without knowing, and unknowingly, like, let's say there's a ritual that you always did in your family, you never questioned why. And maybe this ritual was about keeping this contract.
Keeping it going,
generations. Keeping it going. And you don't even know about it because it's just you were born and this is what you did. So I think a lot of it, when you were saying like, could it be intentional? Maybe some of these families don't even know that there are these contracts that were made, and they just keep, renewing them year after year because they keep the ritual going that their great-grandfather used to do this. And because, there's family traditions, and traditions are very good to make you keep certain things that are not. And how many of us question traditions? É assim.
Yeah.
And you accept, é assim. E na nossa família fazemos assim. And who is Márcio to come in today and say, não. Então, you're banished.
It was Márcio from generation number 15.
15 to come in.
Fuck
our shit up.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, and that's the thing. And that's the thing that sometimes I think not knowing is so much more dangerous than knowing. Because when you know, you make choices based on your knowledge, and you can choose to participate or not participate in things that you don't. Because I think instinctively, if you think about, I don't know, at least for me, there are some things that when I was growing up, and like I didn't even know I was a healer, but my being just repelled, and I would just be like rebelled certain things that I was just like, I don't want to go. I don't want to do this. And I just never understood. And when I said, I don't want to go, it was just, the whole family is going to have like a whole thing because Wacy is not moving. And if I go, I'm going kicking and screaming, and it's like, it will be known that I didn't want to be there.
Tu não achas que é bocadinho placebo? Por exemplo, nós sabemos o que placebo é, como é que funciona, como funciona, não, o que faz, mas nós não sabemos exatamente, nem cientificamente, se consegue explicar how it works. Tipo da placebo effect, cientificamente. Não o que faz, mas como é que funciona. Tu não achas que é bocadinho para que essas coisas funcionam com quem acredita? Por causa do placebo effect of it?
Nah. Nah. I don't think, because I've seen many people who don't believe being caught up in situations that they didn't want to be in, or they didn't even understand. I think that, of course, the belief can means that the situation can have a stronger hold on you mentally, maybe. But I don't think you need to believe for it to happen. I think that, like I said, there are some truly powerful forces that surround us that we don't all understand. There are things that I don't understand how they work. I'm still learning a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm shocked like every time. I'm like, what the fuck? This is real. So I think we just, I don't know. My thing is, and I think that's why I chose the fact that my gift needs to be about a path of light, is because I know a lot of things and I've seen a lot of things that I'm just like, fuck, no, this is fucked up. Like, somebody has to start breaking this, cycle in the way that we deal with this gift. And you have to start opting out of some of these things. You have to start saying no to some of these things. It's not because that's how it's done or because all healers do this that you need to do that. You need to be, because I think there's a reason why they chose somebody like me who's seen the world and understands different things that can just be like, and who's also a psychologist. It's like, no, he's just not that into you. There is not an amount of magic that's going to change that. Move on. Go to therapy. I could give you some therapy. Like, that kind of needs to be the narrative. Like, let's start to heal people and not just give them instant gratification. Because me keeping Marcio around for now, which is engarrafar o Marcio, it's just instant gratification because your ego needs that, right? I need to have this person in my life because that's what the ego story that I'm going with. But that doesn't solve the bigger issues that you may have with maybe the way that you relate. Maybe you're a horrible person and Marcio is just trying to get away from the fact that you're a bully. And he's just like, nah, I don't want to be with this person. And, because sometimes we don't take the time to reflect and be self-aware of who we are as partners and as friends, and as we don't really acknowledge. And I think I've only started to recently say, right, so I have this whole image in my head of the kind of guy that I want to be with. And then one day I started asking myself, but are you that partner too? Who are you as a partner for you to be requesting all of these things from a person and saying, I want a guy who's this and that, and how wonderful are you? Are they getting the same deal that you want? Because I think once you start asking yourself that, then you can start understanding that maybe some of your expectations are just stupid and bogus and that people are imperfect. And if you're allowed to be imperfect, then the other person should be imperfect as well. And it's a work in progress. And, if you put in the work, it could get there or not. But the relationship will serve whatever purpose. And not every relationship has to last forever. It lasts as long as it needs to last for that purpose to be filled. And I think we need, in general, and I don't think that this is an African thing, I think in general, the world needs to change the narrative around relationships. And Hollywood needs to stop feeding us these romantic, I'm guilty, I watch those all the time.
Yeah, we all do.
But
what? No.
Romantic comedies?
Romantic comedies.
Those are my favorite too.
Tu
But I know.
naquelas cenas? You want that?
No,
I watch it, but it doesn't mean that I believe in that shit.
No, but I love it. To me, that's the go-to when I don't want to think, because people just want to watch something that bubblegum literature. Sometimes you read something that's the same way you watch telenovelas and it's really I love watching stuff like that it means nothing, but it's a prescribed happy ending. You already know the ending of the story while you're watching it. I watch that all the time, but I also know that it's not realistic. But how many people have that discernment to say, this is amazing storyline, but it's just a storyline, not I'm waiting for Prince Charming and he's, I'm going to be...
As pessoas vão build up as expectativas delas com base.
Yeah, they'll go on one date and then it's no.
No, but the grand, in the movies, there's always a grand gesture. You break up and then they come in you were recording a podcast and they come in the middle of the podcast and declaração.
Maria, te amo.
Like, like that, or like the one guy that you broke up with 10 years ago is going to come back. And like, so all these different expectations, and imagine like constantly being fed that and the stories that your ego creates around that. And you're almost looking at your partner like, porra. Só tirou a mesa.
Não tem muito a ver também com a nossa cultura cá. Porque agora, sempre que tu mencionaste engarrafar, tu falaste da mulher fazer ao homem. Em momento nenhum tu falaste do inverso.
Não, acontece.
Sim, mas estou a falar de como tu vês. Não sei que é como tu vês, mas é como tu estás a transmitir a mensagem. Que parece que acontece mais vezes da mulher fazer ao homem do que o homem fazer à mulher.
But that's...
But that said, isso quer dizer que isso tem influência da nossa sociedade e da nossa cultura, da necessidade da mulher ser aceita, da necessidade da mulher estar well married, ter bebés.
Actually, the highest...
Tipo, o self-worth da mulher está associado a essa parte toda da vida dela.
O maior índice de... Like, okay, we just talked about like the young girls who do it. Most of the people que engarrafam são pessoas casadas. And it has to do with our culture, because in our culture, polygamy is kind of like the unspoken, accepted thing. So it's normal for your guy to have more than one wife or girlfriend, or to have a girlfriend and an amante. Side chick. Então, há mulheres que ficam fartas dessa cena. Dizem, engarrafa-me lá esse gajo para eu ter momento de silêncio na minha vida. Tipo, tô cansada. And that, let me tell you that here is more socially accepted than anything else. Like, it is known that a lot of women, so the same way that I'm saying that I don't agree with engarrafar, blah, 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 blah. The people who don't agree with engarrafar, tipo namorado. But if you go and you're like, my wife is just giving me some headache.
My wife is out of control.
They will, but in a heartbeat. Because, so the belief around that, right? So in the marriage situation, why does it change? Because they believe that what's happening is that this is not an environment that is conducive to a healthy relationship. So even though initially the person may have chosen you, there are too many distractions and too many other options. And we all know what happens when we have options. It's like you go crazy with it. So in that instance, they believe that engarrafar is just like, it's just making the guy focus. Because what happens is, it's true. They will say things like, you'll hear the conversations. Like, I should totally do a series of recordings of these conversations around.
Start a podcast.
You know? And
não seria invasão de privacidade.
No, it has to be
totally. Don't mind the recorder nor the microphone, just tell me your problem.
Like, don't say your name. But like, so the whole thing is a lot, like the whole theory around engarrafarem os homens, tipo, a mulher engarrafar o homem casado é tipo, o marido pega no salário e ele sai e gasta com as amantes, com as amigas e não sei o quê. E em casa, tipo, não tem nada, não tem comida. They don't have a plan, right? Não estão a construir porque ele está a gastar dinheiro no silk, não sei o quê, não sei o quê. Então, tipo, um homem engarrafado é um homem focado na família. Tipo, ele já não vai andar aí. Então, aquilo que a mulher... Espera, I'm just telling you, like, what the psyche, what they think is happening. Like, so the psyche is that now that he's engarrafado and he's totally focused on the wife, and the wife basically means that she kind of takes control of the situation. So whatever she suggests is what they're going to do. So she's going to start directing him. Like, vamos lá construir. Or like, you know, and he's going to be like, yeah, great idea, vamos lá construir. Oh, devíamos cortar dinheiro para a escola de júnior, blah, 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 blah. So it's like this understanding that now this man is going to be what any normal man should be, like participating in his family's life. But then you have to start thinking about, and I think this whole conversation about engarrafamento brings up a lot of issues with marriage, with relationships, Because I always ask.
Também com a liberdade das mulheres e o que é que as mulheres podem ser e que não precisam estar presas a um homem para ser alguma coisa. Não precisa estar preso a um homem para poder construir, não precisa estar preso a um homem para poder guardar para o júnior.
All of that.
E como tu disseste bem, tipo, a relação dura até quando tem que durar. E depois daí as mulheres têm que se sentir, porque eu também já vi cá, é muito raro tu ouvires falar de divórcios. É muito raro. Ouvires falar de alguém, tipo uma senhora de 40, 50 anos que decidiu, you know what, fuck this, I'm out. Não é possível. Alguém que casou aos 19, 18, como era back when then, né? Era bem normal, até aos 50, 60. Está bem. Não estou a dizer que é impossível, mas também não tem que ser 100% dos casos. Tu não vês ninguém de 50 anos aqui a divorciar, só de 40 anos. Porque isso também é isso. Volta um bocadinho à parte da mulher. O self-worth da mulher está muito acoplado a esses
Mas
tabus.
Não só da mulher, do próprio homem, because there's certain... So I know, like today, which is shocking, right? But there are people our age who get married because there are certain circles that they only get respect if they're married. So in terms of like in the place of work and being given a promotion, they're not going to be given a promotion if they're not married.
Se não tens filhos.
Se não tens filhos, então
porque isso tudo representa e simboliza a responsabilidade.
Right. And so
you should get fat too.
You should. You have to have the belly. So you
gotta have the belly.
You guys are not responsible.
Not at all.
I'm sorry.
Just like kids, we don't have bellies.
I've never been responsible.
I don't even understand how
that?
Somebody like you could have a kid like that. That's
exactly.
That's the narrative. But
Is that
it's
your
like,
brother?
But like, so it's like it's also. So then you have also this thing. That's what I was gonna say. It brings out like this thing. Like you have all these men that are also married for all the wrong reasons. And then this whole idea, because also society does this, that tem mulher para casar, right? Aquela cena sexist that they say, essa é uma mulher para casar. Or tipo, like the thing that I've heard a lot é tipo, tu não és o tipo de mulher que as pessoas vão querer casar facilmente. And I'm like,
whoa.
And I'm like, okay, let's unpack this a little bit. And I'm like, tu tens muita personalidade. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I actually don't want that guy. The guy who is intimidated by my strong personality,
right.
Who is, I don't want to be married to that guy. Because that means that he's going to try and dim my light.
It's not going to end well.
He doesn't want me. He wants an idea of me. Because if he wanted me, then he would be happy that I'm vocal and, you know, like I bought my own terreno and I'm...
There we go again with the flex.
You know? and I have my own company. Like he's like those are the things that he's gonna be proud of and he's gonna want to support that. But if those are threats, and like that's definitely already like a red flag for me.
Mas não seria essa mensagem então que tu tens quote-unquote responsabilidade de passar when people come to you as a healer, as a psychology?
Yeah.
Just, não seria essa mensagem que tu tens de passar e não work with the little bottles?
No. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I personally don't condone that, you know, and that's the thing. Like, I personally don't really believe in that. And I think that also, I think that we all need to understand, I don't know, that we each have a purpose and a path, and all our life stories are not going to look the same. Because your cousin got married at 23 and had 3 beautiful children and her husband is amazing, it's not going to be your story. Because your parents were married all their life and sometimes unhappily married, it doesn't mean that you're going to get married. And I think the one thing that we still haven't said in Mozambique that we need to say out loud is it's okay not to be married. It's okay not to have kids and still be happy. It is possible to do those 2 things, not have kids, not be married, and be a healthy, happy adult. And there's nothing wrong with you. Não tens marido da noite, não foste enfeitiçada. There is nothing. You're normal. Because you are probably looking at the different examples of unhappy marriages and unhappy relationships and saying, maybe I don't want that for me. And maybe if and when I decide to, be a couple, I would like it to be in a different way. And if I haven't met men or a woman that thinks the same way, then that just means that I can't be in a relationship for now because I haven't met my match. But it's okay. You're not cursed. Nobody tied your tubes. Nothing. It's just your moment hasn't arrived. Maybe you need to go to Timbuktu because that's where he is. But, now that we're all grounded, might not happen so far. So, but I'm just saying, like, I think
But
that's a
those are wise words. What you just said right there is exactly for what people need to know is that it's okay, and a lot of times in our society we compare ourselves to other people. We compare ourselves to family members, or you'll have like your mom saying, "Why aren't you more like me? He has like that, and he has like he works 2 jobs, and
Dude, I'm the oldest granddaughter on my mother's side. All of my cousins are married and have kids. I'm like the abomination, if you want to call it that. Like, I'm,
the abomination of Niusi's nation.
I think Ugo misses his MC days.
Now retired.
That's what you keep saying.
Yeah, não existe blueprint para happiness.
No. And I think that that's what people need to accept. That we all just have to strive for whatever makes sense for us. And the rest is just what society told you that, because if you look at all the different, we're talking about Hollywood, like, boy meets girl, boy and girl fall in love, boy and girl get married, boy and girl have kids, and they live happily ever after. Not. Because the movies don't show you all the different things, like relationships that need work and how hard it is to raise kids. Like, the movies don't show you all of that. And I think the reality is that even what you think is the amazing thing, it's not easy. Raising a kid, waking up at 4 a.m. to feed and having this human that you're responsible for the rest of your life is huge.
It's amazing though.
I'm sure it is. But I'm just saying that it's not, and it's not for everybody as well. Because,
I agree.
That's the thing,
There are a few parents, I'm not going to say which parents, that could have done without having kids because they just were not equipped to be parents.
Olha, uma coisa que eu não percebo é como é que de onde é que veio o conceito de que um bebê vai save a relationship.
Oh my God.
Porque eu acho que it works completamente ao contrário. Que tipo, bebê vai test your fucking relationship. Estás a ver?
We were just talking about this the other day.
What?
And it still happens to, like, back in our parents' time, I understand the mindset and how that could have been.
Tipo, aquilo era, acredito que o bebê seria a versão de engarrafar.
Back then.
Né?
Yeah.
Tipo, bebê, tipo, got you.
Yeah, back then.
That's it.
Because back then you got her pregnant and you got married.
Yeah, that's
it.
Yeah.
There was no, right? And we were just talking about this, how today, right, 2020, there are people who are still getting pregnant to save relationship. Look at that. So now you are selfishly putting this little human, innocent, into chaos to save chaos. And this human, like you said, is going to cause ruckus in that household.
Yeah.
So, no, it's not going to get better.
And that human's going to turn into
another human who's going to beat up somebody's wife or child or whatever because they are traumatized. And they grew up in an environment that was not loving. Stop healing your relationships with kids. Stop it. Psych wards are filled. Enough.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, are the wise words of Wacy. On a serious note, Wacy, thank you so much for spending This has gone on for 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Our longest episode, man. We keep breaking our own records. That's amazing. I think we gotta have Wacy back, and maybe with some other panelists, because there's a lot of interesting information that's being shared and a lot of talk that needs to happen to share with people.
Most def.
Yeah. And last note, where can people find your fabrics?
So we
The thing we talked about at the beginning of this conversation.
I'm like, those. Yeah.
Onde é que as pessoas podem encontrar os fabrics e a ela, não é?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can follow our social media for both brands. So the accessory brand is Woogie, and
How do you
that's
spell
spelled
that?
WOOGUI. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And the textile brand is Karingana Textiles. And you can find us also on Instagram and Facebook. You can buy our products at Loja 3D in Salvador Allende. You can buy some of our products in DL Gallery whenever they reopen. Casa Pandia is where you can find the Capulanas. Yeah, but basically, if you get in touch with us online, then you can. And I mean, if I'm thinking people are probably going to have lots of questions about some of the things. I am on Instagram, Miss Wacy. I do usually respond to a lot of questions because I know I raise a lot of things and I provoke a lot of these things. I do have a page. I just not active right now that is dedicated. Sometime I will activate that and put more information out there on like the healing aspect of it. But I mean, you can reach me on Instagram or Facebook and ask questions. I'm not really doing any consultations right now because I think I'm taking COVID to do like a self-healing moment. Yeah, basically, if you have questions, I will definitely answer what I know.
We'll put links in the description.
Slide
to
into
this.
those DMs.
Yeah, exactly.
Let it be about work. Because if you do come with something else, I will block you.
Many 22-year-olds might want to ask you to.
No.
No. Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Wacy.
Thanks,
Great
Wacy.
conversation.
Thank you, guys. It was very cool.
And we out.
We out.